The appeals chamber considers that trial chamber reasonably assessed the importance of the guilty plea, especially when finding that it constituted one of the main mitigating circumstances. Moreover, the appeals chamber found that reasonings of the trial chamber was consistent with the expert report's conclusions, therefore showing that the said report was duly considered by the trial chamber. Consequently, the appellant fails to show that the trial chamber erred by giving insufficient weight to his guilty plea in mitigation of his sentence. This subground of appeal is therefore dismissed. In his second subground of appeal, Dragan Zelenović argues that trial chamber erred in its assessment of his cooperation with the prosecution. The appellant admits that his actual cooperation with the prosecution went beyond the scope of what he was obliged to in the plea agreement, and that trial chamber erred when it considered his cooperation as, quote, initial, unquote, rather than, quote, substantial, unquote. Therefore, the appellant argues that the trial chamber did not give sufficient weight to these mitigating circumstances. The appeals chamber found that the scope of the plea agreement was not restricted in the manner the appellant suggests. Thus, the appellant did not show that his cooperation went beyond the scope of his obligation. Moreover, the appeals chamber notes that both the appellant's actual cooperation as well as his commitment to cooperate have been considered by the trial chamber as one of the main mitigating circumstances in this case. Consequently, the appeals chamber finds no error in the trial chamber's assessment of the appellant's cooperation with the prosecution. As a result, Dragan Zelenović's first ground of appeal is dismissed. In his second ground of appeal, Dragan Zelenović argues that trial chamber should have taken into account the appeal judgment in the case of the prosecutor versus Dragan Zelenović before the State Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The appeals chamber notes that Zelenović's appeals judgment was only made public on the 17th April 2007, while the sentencing judgment in the present case was issued on the 4th April 2007. The appellant therefore failed to substantiate his allegation that the trial chamber should have learned about the Zelenović appeals judgment prior to rendering the sentencing judgment. As a result, Dragan Zelenović's second ground of appeal is rejected. I will now read out the disposition of the appeals judgment. Mr. Zelenović, would you please rise? For the foregoing reasons, the appeals chamber unanimously pursuant to Article 25 of the statute and Rule 117, 117 and 118 of the rules, noting the respective written submissions of the parties and the oral arguments they presented at the appeal hearing of 15th October 2007. Sitting in open session, dismisses the appellant's ground of appeal, affirms the sentence of 15 years imprisonment as imposed by the trial chamber, subject to credit being given under Rule 101C of the rules for the time Dragan Zelenović has already spent in detention since 22nd August 2005, and orders in accordance with Rule 103C and Rule 107 of the rules that appellant is to remain in custody of the International Tribunal pending the finalization of arrangement for his transfer to the state in which his sentence will be served. Mr. Zelenović, you may sit down now. Mrs. Registrar, would you please distribute copies of the appeals judgment to the parties, please? Thank you very much. This concludes the appellant proceedings in this case. The appeals chamber will now arise.